The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's also the home for Autism Live. We're really thrilled to be here with you live on this Thursday morning. It is raining in Los Angeles. It's like our new normal that it rains like Seattle here. It's the weirdest thing because, you know, we've been through 10 years of drought and it's like not our normal thing. But suddenly this year it is. Nobody said El Nino or an El Nina, but we're getting lots of rain. In any case, we got a big show for you. I've got this book with a whole bunch of pages marked in it because we are going to be talking with the author of this book a little bit later on today. And she's very near and dear to me. What a wonderful writer, Liz Becker, and her new book is Listening with the Heart, and the subtitle is A Guide for Understanding Nonverbal Communication in the Autistic Child for Parents, Teachers, and Professionals. It's amazing, and we're going to talk with her about that and take some time with that. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know sometimes you guys like to know what's happening. That's what's happening. But we are going to be here with you live for the next 2 hours, and we do, or not 2 hours, 1 hour, excuse me, we're on a new format. And we love to hear your thoughts, your feelings, your questions, and your concerns. And even though we're going to be spending a lot of time with Liz, I know she loves to hear your comments and questions, and I love to hear them too. So that's going to be, Traven has started to show you some of the ways that you can get in touch with us. And while he does that, of course, notice that our main site is autism-live.com. And when you go there, there's a lot of things to do. We've changed things around, and hopefully for the better, so that you can find more content, easier to be able to target. Look, the autism community, this is a big community, right? There's a lot of things to talk about. We have been on the air now for 8 years, and we haven't even scratched the surface, right? And everybody doesn't need the same thing. So being able to hunt and peck and say, hey, I want to know about toilet training, but I want to know about toilet training for an adult. Or I want to know about what we do in a case where a child is very profoundly affected. Or how about the adult who is so high functioning that, you know, they don't warrant a diagnosis, but they're having some difficulties getting through some different things. I just want to point out that we see on this show that there is this big, beautiful community, and we try to look at autism from a 360-degree perspective, that you can walk into the circle in any one of a million places and have a need for something. And we want to at least give you support and inspiration and hope, but when we can, information that helps you to be able to do the things that you want to do that are substantive and important for you. And by the way, when we say autism community here on Autism Live, we're talking about the large autism community. That includes the individuals who are on the autism spectrum, of course, right? Of course. But it also includes the people who care about them and are trying to help them to get to the things that they so richly deserve. That's what I'm talking about when I say the larger autism community. So, because we may not agree on everything, right? In fact, there might be very little that we agree on, and there might be very little that we have in common because this group is so diverse. But there is one thing that I think that we agree upon, and that is that individuals who are on the autism spectrum deserve respect. They deserve the right to work. They deserve the right to all the things that are important to them, whatever those things are, whether that be having a relationship that is either friendship or romantic, having access to programs, whatever it is, that's what I think we can all agree that we want that. So that's the place from which everything disseminates. We aren't mind readers, though. I like to say that although I am an autism parent, I gave up mind reading to host a show about autism. I could never read minds. So don't make me read your mind. Write in and tell us what you need. And there's lots of different ways that you could get in contact with us. We just went through some of them. But on our homepage, autism-live.com, there is a chat feature, and you can click on that and write into us, and that shows up on my screen, and in that way I can convey your thoughts, feelings, and concerns to our experts. And I know a second ago Traven was showing you my personal email, which you can feel free to write on, and of course you can write on all the other things that he showed you on our Facebook is sort of the most immediate, right? I don't know why I said that like it was intriguing and, a thing, but you can write it on our Facebook. It didn't mean to make it sound as mysterious and ooh as all that, but you can write it on our Facebook. Poor Traven trying to follow me around as I jump through all these different things. In any case, you know what I always say here is that we welcome you, and we like to hold hands because we can get through this together. Si se puede, right? We can do this, and we do every day. All right, I do like to remind you at the start of the show that we have tons of experts on the show. Please do not consider me one of the experts. That is not my gig here. I am here as support. I am an autism parent, a proud autism parent, and I want to help you to get to the things that you need, because I got help along the way and I have a lot of karmic debt to pay down. I want to pay it forward, all the help that I got, but pay down the karmic debt. So it is important to me to help you be heard, to help you to get to what is important to you, and to the people that you love. So that's where I'm coming from. And yeah, so having said that, we like to start every Thursday morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are the experts talking about. How did these terms come to be? What do they actually mean? And what does it mean for us? How can it save us even 5 minutes and $5, right? Because I'm too busy to just learn for learning's sake. I love to learn for learning's sake, but when you got something going on and somebody that you need to help, it's like, I need to know how to do this, right? So this is why we take on these jargon terms, so that we can begin to understand them. We give you the actual definition, which whenever possible we make fun of, because that's a thing to do, right? What else can you do? And then we give you a working definition, which hopefully gives you a toehold on figuring out how does this apply to your life. Okay, so you see that today's jargon term is single case agreement. I got my Carol Merrill wrong. All right, and again, we came into the autism community, a lot of us, and we were like, oh, I gotta learn all these terms. I don't really want to. And now, woohoo, we get to learn a bunch of insurance terms too. Isn't that the best news? Not really. I am sarcastic, but you know what? It makes a big difference on whether you're getting the help and support that you need or you don't if you know some of these terms. So we're taking them on. All right, today's term, single case agreement. Let's take a look at what the actual definition of a single case agreement is. Single case agreement is anything that occurs, that is not the correct oopsie, that is not. So I don't know what the actual definition for a single case agreement is. It's probably something lengthy and has a bunch of insurance terms in it. But I don't imagine that we have the working one, Draven. It's all right, because I can explain it from a very rudimentary point of view. So when we have insurance now for autism in 49 out of 50 states in the U.S., which means that if you are living in the United States, then there is a great, great chance that you have access to an insurance plan, if nothing else, if not from your employer, then through your state, that would give you the ability to have insurance pay for your affordable insurance, pay for your child to have ABA therapy. Now that's big, because ABA therapy is expensive. Part of the reason why it's expensive is because you have to do it in such large numbers of hours that the gold standard is for a 3-year-old to do a 40-hour-a-week program. That's a lot of therapy, right? And to pay people to come to your house or for you to bring your child to a center for 40 hours, it's a lot, right? So you want to be able to have insurance. There are times when people don't have, either because you live in Tennessee now or because we talked about this on Monday, you might be somebody who has a plan, what looks like insurance, but it isn't actually insurance. It's a self-funded plan. That was our jargon on Monday, and that means that your employer is paying for the insurance themselves. And that comes under a different law that does not have to do with the mandates. So let's say that you live in California and you work for a big employer who has self-funded insurance. Now, keep in mind, a lot of self-funded insurance plans, rather than have a lawsuit later on, have already decided to cover autism. So just because you have a self-funded plan doesn't mean you're out in the cold, right? Because a lot of people have sued, and there have been class action lawsuits, and companies and insurance companies are saying, we don't want to deal with it, so they're giving plans to people. Now, an insurance company will they'll find providers that they want to work with. And they'll say, well, let's say you have an Aetna insurance plan, and they say, we have identified these 3 providers that it will cover it if you will go to one of these 3 providers. Now, there might be a reason why that doesn't work for you. It could be that it's just too far away. It could be that you've decided you want to do center-based and they only provide home-based, and you have studies to back up the reason why you want to do center-based. There's lots of reasons why you may or may not want to use the providers that they have. And there are a few reasons why there wouldn't be any insurance, but single case agreement can trump any of those. So let's say that you have insurance, you have an insurance policy, covers ABA, and you don't think that the 3 or 2 providers or 1 provider that they have for you works. Could just be distance. Let's use that one as an example. It's just too far away. And you look up and find that there is another provider that is closer to you that you feel is a good provider. You've done your research and you know what it is. So you can go to that provider and you can ask them to request a single case agreement with your insurance. And if it's a good provider, they should know how to do that. And together, the 2 of you lobby the insurance company to give you a single case agreement. It means that they're going to enter into a contract that isn't for everybody, it's just for you. And people do that all the time. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, you're like, what? People do this all the time. You have to have a reason, and there are lots of reasons to do that. And you have to talk to the insurance company. But if it's a reasonable reason why you can't access or they don't have what's appropriate, it could be that your child is hitting and those 3 providers say, we're not prepared to deal with that. Like we're seeing more and more of that. We'll talk about that on another day, why that is happening. But there are lots of reasons why you would request a company that is not what your policy is covering. And we have seen some people lobby and say, I need a single case agreement when it's a self-funded plan and it didn't cover it. Again, companies don't want a lawsuit. And sometimes it's cheaper for them, as expensive as ABA is, sometimes it's cheaper to give it to you than to deal with a lawsuit that comes later, because the lawsuits have been big. So single case agreement, I see a lot of people who get discouraged, I think is the word, that for years you didn't qualify for insurance, it wasn't happening, and so, you're like, I don't get it. And pretty much every year you've needed to ask and say, wait, do I get it now? Do I get it now? But it gets discouraging. When you call your benefits person at your employer and you say, do I get it now? And they're like, I don't know, or I don't think so. And sometimes, by the way, they're wrong. Sometimes you do get it and they don't know because that change hasn't trickled down. I think it's better to talk to your whoever your provider is, your ABA provider, and give them your insurance card and say, hey, do I qualify for benefits at your center? And then they should be able to very quickly, they know the jargon terms, they should be able to call your insurance company, find out whether you have benefits and if they work with that provider. And they should be honest with you to say, you have benefits, but they don't work here. Would you like us to file for a single case agreement? And if you want to be with that provider, do that. I can tell you that at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, they are very helpful and want to be able to help a family identify if, you know, it doesn't always work out. I'm just not going to candy coat it for you. There are lots of times when you can't have card services because your insurance won't cover it, and they will tell you, you know, we can apply for a single case agreement. It may not be granted, but you know, lots of people have gotten single case agreements. So that's, I'm sorry that we didn't get to make fun of the actual definition, but you know, like we can all imagine how when it's an insurance term, right? We weren't going to understand it. It was just going to be a pile of Greek, right? Where we'd be like, I don't know what that means. So hopefully now you got a better understanding, because single case agreement can make the difference of whether you get ABA treatment or not. And for anybody listening within the sound of my voice, ask the question on a regular basis. I know it's a ginormous bummer. Even when we got funding in California, my husband's employer did not cover it, was self-funded and wouldn't cover it. You know, and it was a ginormous bummer every January to call and say, hey, are you going to cover it now? And it would make me very heated when they would say no. And all the reasons why they would tell me no, which were a pile of poo, right? But things change and companies change and the times change. You got to keep asking. It's worth it, worth it, worth it. Okay, so that's our jargon term for the day. Moving on. We might have a question of the day for you. I'm not entirely sure. Do we have one, Traven? I don't remember what it is and I didn't bring my notes in with me. What is the question of the day? Oh, what do you wish insurance would pay for? There we go. That's a great question. So, you know, we asked you on Monday, do you have insurance benefits that are paying for autism treatments? But here's a big one, because there's a lot of treatments and a lot of aspects of treatment that your insurance may or may not pay for. We see that more and more insurance pays, by the way, for assistive, augmentative, communication devices, which include an iPad. If you haven't explored that with your insurance company, and if you have a child who requires that to communicate, look into it. We're not seeing cases where the child has language where they're agreeing to that, right? And there's a lot of things you can do on an iPad that are language and a lot of things that aren't, right? I've only seen cases where they've granted it when the child needed it to communicate. But we're seeing lots of those, so don't hesitate to ask for that. But what, if you guys could have insurance pay for it, what would you have them pay for? Would you have them pay for more OT services that are more arts-based? I mean, I'd love to see insurance pay for that kind of thing. And the other thing that I would love to see insurance pay for, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier and said we'd talk about it later, insurance companies have seemingly made the decision that if a child is having challenging behavior that involves any kind of potential violence, used to be that an ABA provider could assign 2 therapists at a time to a case, and that funding sources, including insurance, would pay for that. And in that way, one therapist could be working with an individual while another therapist could be making sure that the child doesn't hit the first therapist and can interrupt, because it's a very hard thing to do. If there's a lot of times we see kids that, you know, they'll be very mild manner and then just, you know, like with no warning. And that's really hard for a therapist to protect themselves. It really requires 2 people in the room. And for years, you know, insurance has said, yes, that's the way to deal with it. But they are in droves now saying, no, if that's the case, that child should be hospitalized and put in a hospitalization program. I'm not a clinician, so I don't know, but I feel like clinicians for years have said that we can work on this with 2 therapists. And I don't like the decision being doled out by people who aren't clinicians. That doesn't sit well with me. And I don't know if it sits well with you, but it also concerns me that there aren't hospital programs by the droves for children to go to. I mean, I certainly recommend Kennedy Krieger pretty much on a daily basis to parents, and they have a 16-bed place where they can deal with 16 patients at a time. But we see that more and more ABA providers are saying we can't safely do this because we can't have 2 therapists on your case because your insurance won't pay for it. And I'm very concerned for families who have kids that are going through a phase or have been for a while being in a position where they hit their caregiver, hit their therapist. So I certainly would like to see insurance pay for what clinicians feel is possible at making progress. That's what I'd like. But what would you like? Please write in and tell us the answer to this question as far as you're concerned. And let's use our voices to let our insurance companies know when they're doing something that is not appropriate. All children who are aggressive do not need to be in a hospitalization program. Certainly some of them do. But if you're going to say that a whole bunch more need to go, then you better find some hospitalization programs for these families. That's where I'm coming from. But in any case, that's our question for today. And then, of course, our topic this whole week, which I'm sure you guys have already, you saw it on Monday anyway, we're talking about insurance and autism. And this is a whole other area that parents are almost having to become experts in insurance in order to access all that they can get, all that they should get, all that is needed. And of course, there are lots of arguments about this. I read on Monday, and if you didn't get a chance to see it, a whole thing about the Mental Health Parity Act. And by the way, we weren't sure on Monday, but I've since found out that Congress did approve that language. So it's very important. This is a very important paragraph that we need to know as parents about the mental health parity. That is a federal law that says that if you have a policy that in any place else, let's say that it's, if you've been in a car accident and you have a head trauma and there's no end to the services, the person could be 48 and get services for the rest of their lives, then there can't be a different set of rules for anything else, including autism. So if you have said that you will give it to this area, then you have to give it all. That's why it's called mental health parity. So you might have a state where it says that your child doesn't get therapy after the age of 10, but if in your policy it gives that kind of therapy to someone else for something else at any age, then that cap of 10 means nothing. It is illegal for them to try to shut off your insurance. Sometimes your insurance company doesn't even know that until you raise that claim. But we're seeing more and more people saying the Mental Health Parity Act and in their appeal and winning. And they should, because legally a federal law supersedes a state law. They can make every law they want and say, we think that, you're done at age 7. That's nice. Thank you for your opinion, but the federal law says you can't do that. We like the mental health parity clause, so because it's helping more and more people to get what they actually need. Let's be careful. Insurance is great, and I was a big proponent of let's get insurance for ABA so more people can have it. But we need to be careful that we do not allow insurance companies to tell us what our kiddos need. That's for clinicians. And we have to squawk, because clinicians will squawk, but I hear this all the time that insurance companies say, but the parents aren't complaining. Okay, so everybody complain whenever you're not getting something that clinically is advisable for your child. All right, we're running late. I've gone on and on and on. So as I said, we're having Liz Becker on the show today, and we kind of cleared the schedule so that we could have more time with her. I just adore Liz. I talk on the show about people that I consider to be the footprints in the snow for the rest of us, those moms and dads who have come before us who really have left us a path from which we can diverge, but there's a clear path so that we don't have to start from square one. And Liz is one of those amazing pioneer moms. This is her second book. And her first book, The World According to Matt, was just lovely. I called her the Earl Hamner of autism, and that might be an old reference. Earl Hamner wrote the book that the Waltons was based on. She's just a lovely writer. Well, she's got a new book out. It's called Listening with a Heart, and the subtitle is A Guide for Understanding Nonverbal Communication in the Autistic Child for Parents, Teachers, and Professionals. So we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about this luscious book that I've got all these tabs on with Liz Becker. Stick with us. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, why does my child stim? Well, first of all, let's talk about what stimming is. Stimming is a slang term for self-stimulatory behavior, which is kind of a misnomer anyway, because a lot of the times when our children engage in these kinds of behaviors, they're not to stimulate themselves. Sometimes they're to soothe themselves. So first of all, we want to get rid of the notion that it's to stimulate themselves. But they do these behaviors because there's something about it that feels good. And that's the main thing that we need to know as parents. It's not some random behavior. There's something about it that's giving the child a paycheck. And once we get an idea of what that might be, we need to find a behavior that can take that behavior's place and start to reinforce that. We want to pick something that's more socially acceptable. So if, for instance, the child is doing a lot of hand flapping because they like seeing their blurred fingers, then we can find something else for them to focus on, maybe a toy that does blurred colors, so for a period of time they'll focus on that. The main thing to remember, though, is that there is a reason for these behaviors. There's something about it that feels good to the child. And once we know that, we can begin to change it. There's a phrase that's being used in the autism community called stimming.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out. Find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing. You might need to access new levels of service. But I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that, as they grow, do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better and you're going to see amazing progress.
I'm like, what are you saying, Traven? Oh, it's the joys of a live show. So we're back now. And I've just been enjoying and chatting. That's why I wasn't listening to Traven, because we have Liz Becker joining us via Skype. And Liz, I just adore her. And anytime I get an opportunity to talk to Liz, I always feel uplifted, because Liz is just one of those people that is always going to see things in a very unique but very positive way. As I said before, I love talking to the people who have come before us And Liz has been a pioneer and a really important pioneer in the field of autism and being an autism mom. She's got an incredible kid. And Liz, I'm going to have you kind of start from the beginning and tell a little bit about your story and about how the first book came to be. But then we are going to talk about Liz's new book. This is Listening with the Heart. I mentioned this before, but Liz, I have called you before the Earl Hamner of autism, and I think it's more true than ever. She's an amazing storyteller and an amazing writer. So anyway, too much, but not enough to praise this amazing woman. And thanks for being with us. So welcome, Liz. Tell us about your story and how The World According to Matt came to be.
Well, thank you for having me, Shannon. It began in 1988 when I watched something start to shift with my son. He went from being your normal, average toddler to being withdrawn and fearful. He quit talking. He quit doing the normal, everyday, daily activities that he had been doing, and I knew that something had gone wrong, and I didn't know what it was. I watched this over time, and we were in the midst of moving, and I couldn't actually do anything. The doctor that I took him to said, well, as soon as you get to Virginia, make an appointment for Matt to see the doctor. And I said, okay. So we get down here, and I took him up to Charlottesville. We spent an entire week at Charlottesville having all these different professionals examine Matt. It was a speech therapist, psychologist. He had MRIs done, and regular doctors and occupational therapists. At the end of the week, they sat my husband and I down and told us that Matt had severe autism. He was only lacking in one area, in that he did not harm himself. And because he didn't harm himself, they wanted to just kind of say, okay, let's put him right there at the cusp of moderate to severe. And the autism, back then in 1988, autism had not changed in the professional view for 50 years. They still saw it as this robot-like condition where there was actually no hope for the child. They would always be this way. There's no getting into them. They were secluded and in their own world, and they advised that we institutionalize Matt. And Matt was just 2 years old, and they wanted me to put my 2-year-old in an institution. And I told them no, and they warned me if I took Matt home that he would be too hard for me to handle, and it would be a burden on my family. And it didn't matter what they said. Matt is, my son. So to me, it didn't matter if they considered Matt broken. In my own eyes, I did not see him as broken. It was curious and it was awful, but I didn't know exactly what to do about that. So I brought my son home, and they had told me that it was a robot-like condition. And on the way home, I'm thinking of all the different things, that very small little things that made Matt appear to me as not a robot. There were things that he would respond to, and things that he would do. He would, on occasion, he would giggle about something, and robots don't giggle, right? So I'm thinking of these different things, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to figure this out. There wasn't a lot of research on autism back then, and it was a day-to-day challenge of trying to figure out how to communicate with them and how to get that bond back, because we had that natural parent-child bond going, and when the autism came, that bond got broken. He didn't want to be picked up. He didn't want to be held. He didn't want me in his personal space. It was like somebody had just kind of put up a barrier between us, and I wanted that bond back. So that was my biggest challenge, was how do I get that back between mother and child? And I knew that touch is massively important, and that our first communication was through touch. And it was gentle touches and sitting a little bit closer to him and putting my hand on his cheek when he was feeling bad, and just very light touches until I could tell that he was accepting those touches because he'd start to lean into those touches. And it's just like, oh, see, I knew he wasn't broken. And it just went from there. And I started thinking about writing the book because everything they had told me, every single thing they had told me was wrong. And I thought, if they are still teaching these kinds of things to parents of autistic children, then they are not giving them any hope when there's quite a bit of hope that still exists there. And they're shutting the door on that. And so as we go through all the different years and how Matt was developing, and he went from being completely nonverbal to very slightly verbal to, over the years, now Matt can actually say sentences every once in a while. As we progressed, Matt came out. You could see this personality, this person. I don't see the autism. I see Matt now, and that came about through all these different ways of communicating and putting down all the different myths, figuring out what it actually was. The first book was my attempt at writing. I wanted to put the stories out there because while I was doing the research on deeper kinds of things, I wanted parents to have some type of hope. That was the main thing for the first book on autism in the world, according to Matt, was to give those parents that light at the end of the tunnel, because the professionals were not doing that, and they really needed to have that hope. So while I got that done, I thought, I probably could do this. Yeah. But life gets in the way, and as different things go on in your life, you kind of set things aside, and my book kept getting set aside, and this one actually was the book that I had planned to write 30 years ago.
Wow.
So when Matt is now 33 years old, and I knew 30 years ago that this book had to come out. Yeah. And over the years, I have been able to spot new things. I've been able to add things to it. Newer research has come out. I've been able to look at the different research and say, this fits with what I see. And I'm a big science nerd. That's what I do.
Well, and
Matt was a big puzzle. He's a big puzzle, and I loved it. He was like we were made for each other.
Well, and you have spent a great portion of your life teaching college level science classes, correct?
Yes.
I mean, so I think it's important because a lot of times I get a little fatutzed about when people go, "Oh, it's a book by a mother." Like as if
I've
that
heard
is
that too.
right, as if that is some small thing. And so for people who are saying or thinking that, I just want to let you know that Liz is a scientist in her own right. And so what I love about you, though, Liz, is that I got to be honest. I loved the first book, and it's a series of short stories that are just heartwarming, and you really get to be there with Liz and her family and with Matt, and it's really on a journey. But you almost could pick up the book at any point and just read that story and not have to read the chapter before it or the chapter after it. There's sort of standalone stories, which makes it very palatable to be able to read. And Liz told me that she was working on this book, and I was excited for her because I know that she's a great writer, but I was afraid that it was just going to be the science. But what I love about this book is that Liz tells you something, then she backs it up with the science, and then she very seamlessly, very quickly takes you through a story in her memory of something that happened with Matt, so that you get it in your bones. You understand where she's coming from about what she says, and you understand the science behind it, but you get it on a cellular level, and it leaves you feeling a warm fuzzy, which that's pretty amazing, Liz. I don't know how you do that with a book that has a great deal of science in it, but I don't honestly think for people who are afraid of the science, you should not be, because this book has so much heart in it. I'm going to be honest with you, Liz. I'm not to the end because I can't make myself read through it fast. It doesn't. I don't want to do that. I want to savor it. You know what I mean? But I'm significantly through it, and it's fabulous. So kudos to you. 30 years, I think it was worth it. But
Well, my initial education was in neurobiology and anatomy. I was actually working on my doctorate, and Matt was in puberty, and it was so overwhelming at the time for him to be going through those hormone changes that I had to back off of that particular part. So I am a published scientist, and the scientist part of me, I think, is the part that helps so much with what I did with Matt, because I spent so much more time observing him than anything else. It was, why does he do that? And well, that one's interesting. And I was just fascinated by the different things that he was doing. And they've come out with all over the years. They've changed their mind on different things, but first you were supposed to stop them from doing the echolalia, the repeating back to you. You're supposed to try and help them move past that. And you're supposed to force them to have eye contact with you. And I thought, no. Matt will have eye contact with me when he's ready to have eye contact. And the echoing, my gosh, he's saying words. Why would I be upset that he's saying words? It was speech practice in my mind. And over the years, that research did come out for both of those things, that you should not force eye contact. And echolalia really is speech practice. And so the scientist part of me, I think, is a really big part of why Matt is doing so well now, is because I allowed him to get through the different stages that I was witnessing without trying to change him.
Yeah, I so respect your point of view with your son. And we should say that there's a large part of Matt's story that revolves around his desire to live independently. That this was something that was a part of him, and that pretty much the world was like, that's not going to happen. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Even you were not sure.
Still a rarity.
I'm sorry?
He's still a rarity. It is still a very rare occurrence for somebody with his level of autism, being on where he's located on the spectrum, to be out in his own apartment, on his own, doing what he wants to do every day. That's a very rare kind of thing.
And in fact,
handles
even
it beautifully.
Liz, even in the beginning, when he was making it clear to you that that's what he wanted to do, did you think it was possible in the very beginning?
I've been pushing for it since day one.
Okay. Well, because I thought in the beginning.
Parent has the fear.
Right.
There's a fear in parents that says, what's going to happen if I'm not here?
Yeah. Yeah, well.
The biggest challenge is to get him on his own, because it lessens the fear of what's going to happen if I'm not here. And I think that's a huge driving force. For Matt, it was, I want to live on my own. For me, it was, I want to make sure that you're be able to handle being on your own.
Yeah.
It's very scary, because society, we still have not figured that out. We've been looking at all these years now of a rise in the number of autistic people, and we still have not really come together as to what's going to happen when the main caregivers can no longer do that.
But you did with your son. You figured it out. You put together a plan of how you were going to prepare him so that he could live independently. It was not something that you did in a weekend. As I recall, it was over a 10-year period. Is that right?
Yes. Took 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yes.
And I say that because I think a lot of times parents, we get tired. I mean, it's not a judgment. We get tired and we're like, well, I don't see that. I don't see how that would happen. I don't think I can do that. What do I know about teaching somebody to live on their own? The thing that I always come back to in my head is that, you know, those years are going to pass one way or the other. Do you want to be in a different place at the end of those years or not? That sort of helps me to you know, do things that I think are hard, because the years do pass anyway. That's the one thing we can't stop is time marching on. But honestly, though, even saying that, Liz, to think of, you know, a 10-year time period where you had that goal and you constantly, day in, day out, were working with things, you'd get in through one skill and then you'd be like, okay, now we got to learn this. I think that kind of vision and that kind of perseverance is remarkable. Let's say that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And he does live alone now.
I don't think it's something that anybody else can't do. You know, everything in autism takes time. There's nothing in autism that goes fast. You know, just getting the words to come out of him took many, many years. Getting him potty trained, oh my gosh, that took, you know, almost a decade all by itself. So, you know, everything in autism is very slow moving, but it does progress. One of the things I recommend to parents is to keep a journal. Keep a journal so you can always look back and say, see, this is what he did 5 years ago. Look at how far he's come. And it helps to be able to look back and say, look at the progress. Look what's happening. Because sometimes you don't see it because it's moving so slow you just don't see it. But if you keep a written journal, you know, just jot down in it every once in a while something new that they've done, and keep a record of it, and you'll be able to look back at that, and it gives a person hope. It keeps you moving forward.
Well, like I said, I so respect you, Liz. Let's take a break, and then let's come back, and I want to delve into the book because I have some questions and some comments and some things that I want to make sure that our audience knows about this remarkable book. Again, the book is called Listening with the Heart. The subtitle is A Guide for Understanding Nonverbal Communication in the Autistic Child for Parents, Teachers, and Professionals. And where can people get the book, Liz?
They can order it off of Amazon. It does have an IBS number, so I'm sure that you could order it from any bookstore also, because you can just give them the number that's on for the ISBN number on the back.
Okay.
But right now, I'm still getting it up and running.
There we go.
So right now, it's on Amazon. They can get it up there.
Well, and I really want to encourage people, get the book, but also get the first book, The World According to Matt. It's a great read. It's a great gift to give to somebody. You know, get the two books together and you'll be very, very happy that you did. We're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and talk more with Liz about this new book. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about the first step to empowerment. Accept and embrace this challenge. Sometimes you have people that support you in your denial. Maybe it's your husband, maybe it's your mother. When I expressed my concern to my pediatrician about Wyatt losing language around the age of 2, his response, maybe he's a late talker, he's a boy. Let's wait and see. But what about the temper tantrums? What about the fact that he put his head through the kitchen window? What about the bite marks and scratches all over my arms and chest? He said he's probably just frustrated that he can't express himself. Let's wait and see. But autism doesn't afford us that luxury. Of course, I was relieved with my pediatrician's reassurances, but I should have gone with my gut, because if I had, I could have gotten a diagnosis 2 years earlier. And I lost 2 valuable years that could have been spent on early intervention. And finally, when Wyatt was diagnosed, he was misdiagnosed. But of course, part of that was my problem too. I lied in a lot of those parent questionnaires so things looked better. I can't turn back the hands of time, but I can recommend that you face this challenge head on. Denial prevents us from walking a path we eventually will have to walk anyway. The sooner you face the truth, the sooner you can help your child. Until next time, Take care of yourself and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking with Liz Becker about her book, Listening with the Heart. I just wanted to take a quick second to acknowledge some of the comments that we've got coming in. I want to say big hello to Helen, and thank you for being such a big supporter of the show. We just adore you, Helen. And then I want to say congratulations to Chris Mills, who's got a little one starting at the center at CARD on the 24th. We're excited for you too. Then I want to say to Robin, who wrote in on YouTube and said that she has a son who's never been diagnosed, but she believes that he is on the autism spectrum and is facing prison. Please email me separately and let's see if we can't get you some help and support with that. And then most especially, I want to say to the person who wrote in and said that their five-year-old grandson hit them so hard on the hand that they thought the hand might be broken, and that the 5-year-old hits himself and hits others all the time, and what can we do to stop him? It is essential that you get some help and support as soon as possible. That when a person doesn't have the ability to communicate their needs and their wants and their fears and their concerns, they will often aggress because they don't know what else to do to get their needs met. If this person doesn't have functional communication, it's imperative that he be given functional communication, but it is super important not to change the circumstances in such a way that there is no reinforcement for the hitting, or it will escalate. And when that happens, things get to a point where, as I was saying before about insurance, that we're seeing it's harder and harder to treat this in any other way than hospitalization. So with a 5-year-old, if you get the right help and support as soon as possible, then hopefully that can be held off at the pass, right? So you can feel free to email me too. I don't know where you live, but we can talk about what might be available in your area. But let's remember that hitting and violence is not a part of the autism spectrum disorder. It is certainly a byproduct that can come when a person does not feel that they have a way of getting their needs met. So please reach out to me and let's see if we can't work on that. For anybody who is being hit, there is a part of that can become normal. We don't want that to happen because it's not normal. Let's not normalize it. Let's see if we can't get you some support as soon as possible. But we're talking with Liz Becker, and she's got an amazing book, Listening with the Heart, a guide for understanding nonverbal communication in the autistic child for parents, teachers, and professionals. Liz is one of those pioneers that has left prints in the snowshoe prints for all of us to follow. In this book, you talk about an event in which, you had to say to Matt, to your son, "Are you wanting to hurt me?" That just wrecked my heart, Liz, when I read that. But you have been very successful in having a wonderful relationship with your son. He now, even though, as you say, has some pretty profound effects of being on the spectrum, he lives independently. And as I was reading through your book, it's just amazing to hear all the things that he does and that he plans and that and how much care he takes of you and of others. I have seen on Facebook that he has a new baby. Is the baby's name Bilbo, like Bilbo Baggins?
Yes, Bilbo. As a little kitten that was found abandoned by its mother. So I'm raising it right now. It's only 3 weeks old, but it's doing very well on formula. And Matt adopted it. It was a surprise because I knew Matt wanted a cat, but every time I'd ask him, "Do you like this one? Do you like that one?" He'd always say, "No, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready." And this one, he didn't even meet. He heard it cry over the phone, and when he heard that kitten cry, it did something about the crying. He became attached right then and there, and yeah, he's adopted it. So in a couple of weeks. And Matt will have a new roommate.
There you go. And I want to point out that Matt is in his 30s now, correct?
Yes, he's 33.
33, and he's kind of what we call a gentle giant, right? He's not a small man. He's a very big man, but
He's a very big man.
but he is what I refer to as a gentle giant, and a very gentle soul and a gentle human being.
Yes.
But I'm sure, and you write in the book about one particular incident that, there are times in his life where not being able to communicate his needs has been frustrating.
Right.
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 And how did you deal with that, Liz?
When he was younger and smaller than me, when he would go into a fit of rage, I would grab him from behind and put my arms around him to keep the arms from flailing all over and take him down to the floor. And then I would just sit and whisper in his ear, "It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. Just take a breath, take a breath." And I wouldn't let go. He would fight and fight and fight against me, and I wouldn't let go until I could feel that he had just given in. And as soon as he would give in, I would loosen my grip, and then I would make sure that he understood that what I would do next was an actual hug and not a forceful type of restriction. But Matt got bigger than me.
Yeah.
And when Matt got bigger than me, being able to do that became an impossibility. And the times that he would do that became further and further apart. I didn't see it very often as he got older, and I was always very thankful. But in that instant that you're talking about, Matt was bigger. He was taller than me. He was stronger than me. If he wanted to have hurt me, he could have. And I had to de-escalate in a completely different way, and I had to use words. I had to verbally bring him down, de-escalate by asking him certain questions. And because he is a gentle soul, I was reaching for that. I was reaching for that piece of him that loved me.
Yes.
And Matt was feeling threatened. He would never have grabbed the hammer. He would never have done that had he not felt threatened. And I knew that that threat was me. So I had to figure out how to take my threat away from him. And I told him that I was sorry, that I should not have done that. I should not have yelled at him because I had given him an angry voice. And Matt does not do well with anger. He has a very difficult time with anger. And I had to make sure my own voice was calm. I had to make sure my own body language was not stiff. I had to make sure I was relaxed. And inside, I was shaking. I was shaking. This child, it could hurt me.
Yeah.
And I chose to step closer and not back away. I stepped closer.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but we're almost out of time. And I want to say that people need to get the book, to read that, but other stories. One of my favorite, Liz, is when you write about a recent Christmas. We don't have time to talk about it, but I want to urge people. You will laugh, you will cry, you will hug this book towards you. I think the best thing, the stories are the best thing for me, but the other thing about this that I want to make sure you guys know is that you go into great detail to explain what nonverbal communication is and about how that's most of how we communicate and how that is a strength in our kids and that we need to use how we non-verbally communicate properly with our kids. I'm out of time, Liz, but the book, tell people where they can get it.
You can get it on Amazon. Just type in either my author name, Liz Becker, or you can type in the title.
Okay.
Right now, that is the main way to get the book. I will be doing some book signings around the country, so if I'm in your area, come on out and I will sign your book, and I'll be bringing books with me.
All right.
It will be up at Barnes & Noble soon.
All right, Liz, I adore you. I hate to cut you off, but we got to go. Thank you so much for being with us. And I want to remind everybody, watch the show tomorrow when Nancy Allspaw Jackson and I are on with a great actor, George Steves. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Liz.